Welcome, everyone. My name is Jeffrey. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, so thank you for being patient with us. It's been one of those evenings for us, or afternoon, wherever you are. I'm going to be a presenter. We're waiting to see if Dr. Maria Aaron can join us, but I'm going to go ahead and continue to move on. So if you can hear me now, hi, Frank. Good to see you, hear you. Great. Elizabeth, glad you're there. Thank you. We're going to talk about creating sticky learning today. And when Dr. Aaron comes on, I will let her talk some things. So right off the bat, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you in advance for your mental engagement. There's plenty of things you could be doing today, this evening, wherever you are in the world. We appreciate it. And I want to know, where in the world are you? Would you type in that text chat box on the left-hand side in that long, narrow box? Would you type in where in the world you are? And tell me what your weather's like. Tell me what your weather is like. Type it in. Thank you very much. So, Jennifer, Greenville, South Carolina. Reza, Philadelphia, great. Atlanta, Boston, Houston, Richmond, here we go. Honolulu, lots of folks. Thank you, Eileen. I'm glad I'm not in Dallas. I'm actually from Dallas, but I'm in D.C. today. So Denver, Colorado, we're just a little bit jealous of the 85 degrees, some of us, not all of us. Portland, Oregon, Andreas, good to see you, hear you, see you through texting. So I'm saying Utah. Wow. Francisco, thank you very much for joining us. Denver. Keep those coming in, everybody. I'm going to be asking you questions throughout the entire presentation, and we'd like for you to be active and involved. So thank you for
Jeff.
that.
It's Maria Aaron. Hey.
Hi, Dr. Aaron. So
we have just had we've had a nice storm here in Atlanta, and we've completely lost all of electricity in our house. So I can hear you, but I can't see you or see your slides.
Okay, so well, I'm glad you're back with us. We were a little concerned. And for everybody who's involved, say you can at least type in, text in, hi to Dr. Maria Aaron. And what you guys all don't know, that Dr. Aaron and I know, and the team at AA know, we spent about 30 minutes because I was the problem child having the sound issues. I broke my headset. So you have a great team in the headquarters office, as well as Adobe Connect that's helped us with this. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Aaron, I'm going to move ahead. I'm on the presenter-attendee agreement, everybody. And I believe in the law of the click. If at any time this presentation veers in a direction that doesn't meet your needs, you get a text, you get a phone call, you need to get up, it's not working for you, you have the right to click on out of this presentation. And you're adults, take care of your adult needs, please. We're going to ask you to put any devices around you on vibrate. Some of you have 2 or 3 computers or devices open, and we're just going to ask you to put those on vibrate so they don't distract you during this presentation. We're going to say that texting, typing, social sharing is welcome. You may text, type, social share anything that I say. Anybody who writes something in the chat box, please don't social share that unless they give you permission to do that. And we're also going to ask you just to follow the golden rule of Twitter in these day and ages. If you're going to tweet something from the presentation, which we're giving permission to do, tweet unto others as you would have them tweet unto you. And then also tweet something good from the presentation before you tweet anything bad. Along those same lines, let's make understanding our goal, the science of learning. Looking at the science of learning, let's make understanding the goal. And then we're going to declare that this is a safe space to agree, disagree, ponder, and question. So this is a safe place. And finally, I'm going to give you a free pass. If I ask you to do something, to text in something and you don't want to do it, you can tell yourself you're using the free pass, or you can type in FP, and I know that that means you're using your free pass, and you can use this free pass as frequently and as often as you like. So there's our presenter-attendee agreement. Here's a little bit about me. This is what I look like now. I'm a nonprofit junkie. My background is in education. I'm a meeting and event professional. My post-baccalaureate work is in the study of andragogy, which is a study of how the human adult brain learns. About, I would say, 7 years ago, I had to unlearn everything I learned in college, because the science of learning came out and proved it was all wrong, which was a hard thing to do. Here's some of the organizations I've worked for over the years. You may know 1 or 2 of these, you may not know some of them. I work for this company now, the company with the cool name, Velvet Chainsaw Consulting. I'm Executive Vice President of Education and Engagement. So I'd like to know something else about you. I'm Dr. Aaron, and the people at AEO would like to know something else about you. Would you type in your favorite mentor or leader? Who's your favorite mentor or leader? Type in, who is your favorite mentor or leader? Kind of curious about that. Who's your favorite mentor or leader? So I see people typing. Steve Jobs. Thank you, Brandon. Richard Held. Got that. Joel Schumann. Thank you, Mina. Bruce Mahler. Thank you, Maureen. Keep those coming. Buzz Keeger, thank you, Carolyn. Mike Limp, love that, Claudia. Use that FP if you want. Casey, use that FP. You got it. Anita, Bob, Ken, I'm using just some first names after some typing in. All right. Andreas, Bob Watsky, I believe is last name. Keep those coming in, folks. Appreciate it very much. So I'm going to move on. You can keep typing those answers in. By the way, everything in the chat will be recorded as well. So I'm going to give you some books. You're going to get books a lot here with these presentations. Here are 3 books that if you're really interested in doing better presentations, whether it's at your work or for AAO or just in general, here's 3 books that are really good. The Make It Stick book is the top one that I would recommend out of these 3. Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning. Just be prepared. It's going to mess with your mind. And good, Laura, I'm glad you like Make It Stick. What do you like about Make It Stick, Laura? Would you type in something there, text it in, so for the rest of the group, what you like about Make It Stick? 12 Brain, Mind, Learning Principles in Action. The Field Guide to 6 Ds is a little bit more academic, but it also really talks about using design techniques in your learning presentations. So here's what we're going to do. It blew your mind, Laura, okay, and made you rethink how you teach, and you quote it all the time. So there's your testimonial from one of you. It blew her mind, and she had her residents read it. Hey, I'm all about that. Here's what we're going to talk about in this presentation. We're going to discuss illusions of knowing, why illusions of knowing mislead our learning. Why the illusions of knowing mislead our learning. We're going to identify several. EBE stands for evidence-based education strategies that your education should embrace for greater attendee ROI. And also we're going to define and explain why elaboration is critical to make new learning stronger and more memorable. These will be some tactical things that you can put into practice with your presentations. We're going to discuss the why before the what. So which one of these 3 interests you the most? Here they are. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds. Read them to yourself. Type in 1, 2, or 3, or FP. Which one of these 3 interests you the most? And would you tell me a little bit maybe why it interests you? Which one of these 3 interests you the most and why? I'll give you a couple of seconds to type those in. So I know some of you are typing. Thank you very much. We got a 3, 2. Here we go. It's going to start moving fast now, too. People are burned out these days. I want to be able to make it awesome. Way to go, Jennifer. We want you to do that, too. Where did teachers go? Where did my teachers go wrong? Teachers go wrong. Lots of 2s coming in, 3s and 2s. We tend to deceive ourselves. Sheriff, yes, yes, yes. We deceive ourselves when it comes to learning. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Brandon, thank you, ROI. Frank, you like distinct strategies to employ? Yep, many of us do. Some 3s, some 1s, because I spend a lot of time teaching, want to be better. That is a great, comment there and showing that your own personal professional development. And number 3 here, how much is TMI? Wow, good. Elizabeth, thank you for doing 2 of them, 2 and 3, and 3s and 1s. So thank you very much for doing that, folks. So why in the world would this presentation be important to you? What's the magic carrot? What's in this presentation for you personally and professionally? Well, if it weren't for attendees, we'd be out of jobs. If it weren't for students, we'd be out of jobs. If it weren't for the participants who are coming to your presentation, you wouldn't be presenting. And our attendees are the primary reason that we're there. You are there presenting for the audience. The audience is there to learn. It is not about you, it is about them. And this is a critical point. The reason we offer education and conferences is for these participants. Our participants, the people who come to your presentations, whether it's at AAO or anywhere else, they are the stakeholders. They are your customers. They are also your strongest critics. They are also your ardent supporters. I like to call them learners. So you're going to hear me using the term learners. We are all lifelong learners today. Our attendees are changing and evolving. Our learners are changing and evolving. And it's important to remember what this session offers will never be adequately understood or even visible until you step out and practice them. And so be bold, be courageous, find a comfortable place for you, to do one or two of these things as we're going to go through it, and that you feel comfortable just testing them and seeing how they work. We need to be open and embrace learning, unlearning, and relearning. As a lifelong learner, the unlearning piece is the hardest thing we will ever do because it's very difficult to unlearn something that we've done for our life. So how do you prefer to learn? I'd like to know. Text in, please, for me. How do you prefer to learn? What is your preference when it comes to learning? How do you prefer to learn? Type in some responses for me. So we've got Vivian saying experiential, read, visual, okay, some visual, in person, read, listening to audio files while jogging, okay, AAO webinars, woohoo, read, hands-on experience, visuals, lots of visuals here, discussion, visuals. I'm curious, those of you who typed in visuals, can you elaborate on that a little bit for us? Tell us what you mean when you say visual. Read, highlight, then ask questions. Beautiful. Beautiful. And I'm going to tell you, all you people who wrote in read, when you read, make it stick, just be prepared what it talks about, what happens to the brain when we're reading. Visuals, videos, experience in didactics, auditory, visuals. So thank you for sharing that. Pictures, cases, videos, need to see in print to make it stick. Interesting, Preston. I'm curious about that one. See someone do it. Good. Relaxed, open discussion. I'm not sure if it's Gerald or Gerald, so I'm going to say both. See someone do it, relax, and then relax. So here's what's interesting. Learning illusions are potent persuaders. Our beliefs about how we learn persuade us, and it causes us to misjudge what's actually happening. We are going about learning in the wrong ways. In the Make It Stick book, they talk about this, how reading, for instance, and I'll just tell you this, reading, when you read something, the brain gets familiar with the words. And so the brain says, I know this because the words look familiar to me because I've read it, and therefore I've learned it. And that's where we become misguided. We are misguiding our attendees and giving them poor advice as well. Too much of what we think we know about learning is taken on faith and intuition, but does not hold up under empirical research. This is evidence-based education. Persistent illusions of knowing lead us to labor at unproductive strategies. I know I'm hitting this kind of hard, but I'm just wanting you to think about this. We can get you to think about this and move in this direction. Our persistent illusions of knowing lead us to labor at unproductive strategies. How do you know if you've learned something? Would you type in some responses for me? How do you know if you've learned something? Type in some responses for me. How do you know? Here's what you're talking about or thinking about, what you're going to text in. How do you know if you learned something? You can apply it in the real world. Thank you. Able to explain it? Able to explain it and teach it. If you understand it, if you remember it, you can teach it to someone else. Thank you, Eileen. Behavior changes, like that one. Thank you, Robert. Can recall and apply it to a later time. Can explain to someone. You can teach it to someone. You guys are getting it. Try to teach it. I can do it. I change behavior. Very interesting what your responses are here. Teach it. Explain it to someone else. Practice. Able to discuss it after with my colleagues. What's critical here is if you can put it into your own words and tell someone else about it. If you just mimic or parrot what the expert or speaker said, you've not learned it. You've parroted it. And so, oftentimes, just think about this here. When you're just shooting out there, and oftentimes our presentations are just throwing information out of an audience, out into the walls, making it stick. This is a navigation term, sighting an object on the horizon in the distance where you're traveling. I want you to think about this metaphor here. Climb a height, sight an object on the horizon in the direction of the travel, and then head that way. Then adjust your compass, heading to safeguard that you are still gaining on your objective while you tread through the forest below. When you're out there and you need to climb up high, find a point in the future where you need to go, set your compass in that direction, climb back down, and then head that way. This is what we want you to do with learning, with your presentation. Instead of just designing the presentation about delivering information, shift the thinking. How do we help the learners get this? How do we help the learners understand this? And what are the learners going to do during your presentation? What are they going to do? So how do you quantify the value of your presentation? I'd like to know, how do you quantify the value of the presentation? This is education brand, but the presentation that you're going to present. How do you quantify it? How do you know if there's value to it? Would you type in some responses for me? How do you know the value of your presentation? How do you quantify it? What do you look for? Apply it clinically. Manage an unexpected situation without thinking about it. Feedback from learners, improving the quality of care provided, audience feedback, interaction of attendees. Financial reward. Wow, interesting. Learners use information to change behavior. Pauline, I like that one. Learner applies principles clinically at bedside or in the OR. Thank you. Feedback, rating and comments, insightful questions from the audience. These are all really good points here on how you quantify that. And so you need to be watching your audience, their body language, and how they're responding to you. Seeing learners apply, and sometimes we can't quantify the value until after the presentation. What you can do is you can do simulations with them. You can ask your audience to think about how they would apply it, and then ask them to, in their mind, visualize applying what they've learned from you. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What's happening? How does their patient respond? And ask them to talk about that with each other and elaborate on it, because the mind doesn't know real from fake. So you can take them there. You can actually take them there. And here's what else I'm going to say to you. Satisfaction with a presentation does not equal learning. If they are happy and they're satisfied with your presentation, that's a good thing, but it doesn't mean that they're going to change attitudes, behaviors, and skills. Because it may mean that for that 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, they were happy at sitting there and escaping from everything else. So think about that as well. Most of us would agree that we don't deliver nearly as much value as we thought when it comes to our education offerings. So Gerald, you just typed in significance to audience, the value proposition, which aligns with what I'm talking about here. Many of us believe that all education has some inherent and intrinsic value. In an increasingly competitive, global, and knowledge-based business climate, I shortened the word business there, learning effectiveness has become more important. So, Naveen, I love what you're saying. 5 to 7 minute talks at our conference. It's hard to convey learning points in a very short time. Absolutely. You're 100% correct. So pick one. Pick one in 5 to 7 minutes. And half that in time, spend 2 or 3 minutes on talking about it, and then let them spend 2 or 3 minutes figuring out what it means to them, how they're going to connect it to their job. Learning effectiveness is the source of competitive advantage. Think about this. Your learning effectiveness is a source of competitive advantage. Your education should yield a greater return investment for attendees. What you're going to present should yield them a greater return on investment. Now think about your own sessions or workshops that you attend. You want some ROI. And you want to know, if you're going to invest time and resources to attend, you want something from that. So when does education create a real value for the audience, the learners, the participants? When does your presentation create real value for attendees? Would you type in some responses? You're getting how this is working now. So just when you see a question come up, start typing in an answer. Apply it Monday, when they can apply what I taught them. Okay, love that. You're absolutely right. So plan with the end in mind. When they use the learning points to make change in their lives and practices, when they can apply it, when new information principle is learned and can be applied soon, when you change their way of thinking, they can apply it, ability to pass on and excel in exams, when they face the situation we discussed, okay? Jennifer, when new information helps change old behaviors and patterns. And here's the thing, Jennifer. It's tough for us, just information alone, changing our mindset. We have to really think it through. And learning requires that they connect that information to past experiences, and it may mean they need to change what they thought, and they have to make sense of it. It's called sense making. They have to make sense of it. And third, they also have to think about how they would apply it, which you guys all got here. That's when the real value is there. So education produces real business value only when it's applied to the work of the individual or their organization. And you got this one right on the head. Most education, in the education world, we call it learning scraps. Because here's the thing. If they come to your presentation and they don't learn anything, was it worth their time? If they come to your presentation and they learn something, but they don't remember it, was it worth their time and their money and their resources? If they come to your presentation and they learn something and they remember it, but they remembered it at the wrong time, was it worth their time and resources to be there? If they come to your presentation and they learn it and they remember it and they remembered it at the right time, that's where it no longer is learning scrap. So this is what's interesting in this. How do we make our presentations not become learning scrap? What do we do with this? Learning scrap is wasted efforts, wasted time, wasted opportunity, and it's expensive. And so information delivered but is never mentally processed, connected to past knowledge and experiences, understood or applied. Here's the thing. Dr. John Medina, Dr. Daniel Willingham, my mind just went blank. Come to me here. There's a bunch of education researchers, cognitive psychologists, neuroscientists that would say to you, information does not change anybody. And they cannot listen to you and think at the same time. They're doing one or the other. And if they're not processing the information mentally, learning is not occurring. If they're not processing the information mentally, learning is not occurring. And if they can't think and listen at the same time, we have a problem, which means we have to shut up sometimes as speakers. So it adversely impacts the learners and their company's competitiveness if they just get learning scraps from you. So look at this. This is a kind of a detailed slide here. This came from the Conference Executive Board. Learner control, education provider control. What we like as presenters is the control of the information, because we feel if we can control the information, we can control their minds. We can't. We can't have that happen. We want to move to the right as much as possible, where there's learner control, where they feel that it's applicable and they begin to process it, make sense of it. When they can truly understand in different ways, then they can manipulate the information. Well, I thank you for putting that in. And I'm going to mispronounce your name. I'm just going to call you SV number 2. Sorry. When the unfamiliar becomes familiar. That is really, really important. So I just wanted to show you this slide for an overall look. Scrap learning by industry. Just kind of take a look at this. Corporate Executive Board has actually gone out there and shown where scrap learning occurs, about how much is happening in various fields. So learning scrap. The typical conference education, 45 to 53% of it is learning scrap. Less than 6% of the conference education becomes performance improvement. This came from the Corporate Executive Board. Did you catch that number there? Less than 6% becomes performance improvement. And I believe all of you are presenters, teachers, facilitators for a reason, because you care about others. And I believe you want to be effective in what you're doing. I believe that's where we share the same thing. Now look at this. Education spend per employee. Average spend from 27,000 companies per employee on education was $1,200. Average spend. You multiply this out and you get the conference learning scrape waste. $2.7 million wasted because we were ineffective with our learning. So Mina, I think it's a great point. What about flipped classroom design? Before I answer the question, Mina, would you type in your understanding of what a flipped classroom design is so that everybody gets that, and we'll come back to it. Would you type that in? So, again, here's just some more metrics, the value of performance improvement. And when you get it to stick when it actually causes attitude, behavior, and skill change, which is what you want, it is extremely valuable to folks. And an increase of 30 million if tweaks made to education that increases performance improvement. And think of those words. So learning means acquiring knowledge and skills. Acquiring knowledge and skills. Starts there. Having them readily available from memory. So there's the retention piece. And making sense of the content. Sense making is so critical, and you can't do this for them. They must do it themselves. And connecting to previous content and experience. This is where oftentimes gets stuck. And not in the good way with stickiness, but it becomes a barrier because we say, well, that's not my experience. And my experience says, I'm a visual learner only. That's my experience. That's not based on science. You guys don't do scientific method based on your personal experience. And we have to think about this from a science point of view. So I'm going to drop a bomb. I'm going to ask for grace for anybody that I offend with coming up comments. I'm just going to ask you for grace right off the bat. We are all visual learners. Dr. John Medina, Dr. Ruth Coleman Clark, Dr. Daniel Willingham would say to us, the brain thinks and dreams in pictures. It does not think and dream in words. We are all visual learners. Even those who have visual challenges think and dream in pictures when they read Braille. So Mina, thank you. Written material in flipped classes, written material is given to the attendees prior to the time to be prepared prior to the hands-on practical skills training. It can also be a video online. They have some work that they do ahead of time before they come to the presentation. So the learner, the attendee, the participant, does something that's either sent to them via email, reads it, or watches a video online, and then they come to discuss what they read or saw. Now, so all of you are in ophthalmology, so this whole thing about visual learning is interesting. Learning means using that knowledge and skill for problem-solving opportunities. Learning requires memory. It has to be there later to use it. I think we would agree with that. If they don't remember it, did they learn it? You know, learning is the residue of memory. Think of that. Learning is the residue of memory. We can't stop learning and remembering. We have to do it for the rest of our lives. I think you all would agree, you can't rest on what you learned 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago. We must continually learn and unlearn and relearn. Well, we probably agree, learning is an acquired skill. This is something that's so critical for your future. If you can get better yourself at learning, you can become a better presenter or teacher or facilitator. If we can get really good at this learning piece, and if we can deal with some of our own misbeliefs or myths and the evidence, what the evidence says about how we learn, because the evidence is pretty loud and clear on how we learn and why we learn it that way and what works for us and what doesn't. And the challenge is that maybe in your history or past, we've sat under professors and listened for years, and we thought we were learning. And the research shows the worst thing to do to somebody is didactic. There's a reason why I've had you texting in nonstop, so that I can see you processing information and see where you are, and so that you're thinking about it. And this is an acquired skill. The most effective learning strategies are counterintuitive to what we think. If learning strategies are counterintuitive, and most of what we know about learning is wrong, how does this impact your presentation, folks? It's time for you to type in some responses. If learning strategies are counterintuitive, I was laughing at what Mina wrote in. If learning strategies are counterintuitive, and most of what we know about learning is wrong, how does this impact your presentation? So I'd like to hear what some of you think by typing it in and sharing it with us. If you're comfortable, or you can type in FP if you're uncomfortable with this, I'm okay with that. What do you think? What are some of your responses? Say less, interact more. Sheriff, amen, 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 yes, yes, yes. I'm so with you there. So with you there. Casey agrees. All right. I'm curious what else is coming in through here. And, you know, I want to tell you this as you're typing in responses. If you're to the point where I'm like, what am I going to do? You know what? You're following the biology of your brain. Your brain doesn't want to think because thinking is work. And it's toward the end of the day for many of us. We've worked all day. Why do we want to do more? So when you're with a group of learners and you're presenting and they don't want to participate, you just say to them, you know what, guys, you're following the biology of your brain because your brain wants to reserve the resources just in case the brain perceives a threat. It's very clear. There's a small piece of your brain called the amygdala. It's an almond-shaped piece in the back part of your brain that controls everything. It can shut down the front part of your brain, the frontal lobes, the frontal cortex, which is where learning occurs. It's the decision-making factors. And so the amygdala will say, we're not going to do this. And we have to convince the amygdala to let go of their body's resources to think. So some other have come in here. Discovering learning classrooms. Love that. Laura, stop giving lectures. I show pictures and go through the thought process. That is really interesting. I think people are going to be contacting you, asking you how to do that and how it's working for you. That's what we're here to learn. Okay, thank you, Pauline. No intro, get to the point. All right, small group sessions rather than big audience. So this stuff scales, folks. And the easy thing to do in a room, a four-walled room, to do what I'm doing with you now, and some of you are going to say, I don't want to do this. We get it. You're following the biology of your brain. Do the other, what your brain likes to do the opposite. You want to encourage people to turn to their neighbor on the right and left or in front of them or behind them, talking twos or threes, not bigger than twos or threes, and process the information together. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And let them go through this. We can easily fall into the trap of presenting information in unproductive ways. Absolutely. The interactivity, the question to ask yourself is in your presentation. If you only have 15 minutes, can you give up 2 minutes? Surely you can. Can you give up 2 minutes? 1 minute at the beginning, somewhere in the middle, and 1 minute at the end, to let them process that information? Can you ask a pivotal question? If you have a 30-minute presentation or an hour presentation, where in your presentation can you stop and let them think? Maybe you put a question up on the screen and ask them to write down an answer. Let those introverts think it through before they talk. And don't put people on the spot talking out loud in front of the whole audience. They'll feel most comfortable talking one-on-one with somebody else. And this is the really critical piece for this. Can't assume one mode of presenting information works for all. Need multiple methods. So here's what I would say to this. We know now we're more alike than we are different when it comes to learning, because it's a biological process. It is an electrical process that actually happens in the brain. Now, some of us like receive information through multiple senses, and the more senses that we can engage, the better off we are. So this is, I think, Courtney, what you're saying, multiple methods. But the more work of learning the individual does, the better off they are. So I want you to think of that. The common sense practice, attending education and listening to a speaker automatically produces learning. It doesn't. Common sense practice, attending lectures means learning is easy. It doesn't. What do you need to build a house? I'd like you to type in some responses. What do you need to build a house? What do you think? What do you need to build a house? Type in some responses for me. What do you need to build a house? I'm looking at the time. We've got about 20 minutes to go. You can ask questions of me anytime as we're going through this. All right, here comes some responses. A plan, a blueprint, contractor, someone who has done it before, space, tools, building permit, foundation, time, resources, materials, funding, tools, materials, multiple things, plan, land, a great architect and contractor. Some of you have actually built a house. I can tell by your responses. Cooperation and coordination. Andreas, that's an interesting twist on all this. Labor. Raymond, thank you. Labor. Keep those comments coming in. What do you need to build a house? What do you need to build a house? Building a house requires knowledge of countless materials. Permit. Building a house requires knowledge of countless materials. Building a house requires conceptually understanding of other aspects like load-bearing properties, ground types, energy transfer. Building a house requires big picture understanding of how it all fits together and the purpose it serves. I hope you're beginning to see where I'm going with this analogy. Authentic learning requires knowledge, conceptual understanding of application, and understanding of the big purpose. We now know from the research by neuroscientists, cognitive psychologists, neurobiologists, that it's principles first before the tactics. This is critical to understand. Principles first before the tactics. Your brain would prefer the tactics and not deal with the principle because it doesn't want to think. The research shows if you just tell them the tactics, just copy what I'm doing, or here are the tips, here are the high points, you do a disservice to the brain, and more than likely they fail in implementation because they don't know how to contextualize what's happening because they don't understand the issue underneath of the quick tips that you gave them. And this is critical for you to think about in your presentation. If your presentation is nothing but takeaways, and they don't ever deal with the principles underneath those takeaways, they may get it for a year, but they're not going to come back to it. Because if they understand the principles first, then they can create their own takeaways. And it becomes theirs and they own it. They can actually take other people's takeaways and make it fit for their context. Mastering the lecture text is not the same thing as mastering the ideas behind the lecture or the text. I'll let that sink in. Now, if you've noticed, I've been reading my slides word for word. There's a reason for that. The research shows if I put up slides and I don't read it from word for word, the brain gets disconnected. It's not sure whether to listen to me or read what's on the slide. And it has incongruence going on. So I do think it's appropriate that if you're going to have slides with words on it, don't put too many words on it, but put it up and read it, or have them read it and go silent. Go silent and say, read this for yourself. Give them 30 seconds. And I said, what do you think it means? Turn to your neighbor on your right and left. What do you think that means? And that right there is causing them to process this information. Now, let's start backwards. What did I do when the presentation started? Did anybody remember? We had some technical difficulties. Dr. Aaron did join us. We had some technical challenges. Do you remember what I did at first? Type in, do you remember what I did first? Let's see how you do. Set ground rules, okay? Asked us to name a mentor, all right? Asked us where we're from, absolutely. You know, within the first 15, 20 seconds, I asked you to type in something that seemed meaningless. I asked a rather comfortable question that most people are comfortable saying, here's where I am, here's what the weather's like, name and weather. I actually said thank you. That was the very first thing I said, absolutely, after I said thank you for being patient with us. And I said thank you for your engagement. I trusted that you were going to get mentally involved. Then I went to name and weather. Then I did the presenter-attendee agreement, absolutely. And then I asked you to name a mentor. Look at how many times I had you do something. Now, if we'd have been face-to-face and I did the presenter-attendee agreement, I would have asked you to give me a thumbs up if you agreed with me, or a thumbs down if you disagreed with me, or a thumb sideways, because there is no right or wrong. And that's for all my introverts, the people who are uncomfortable with talking out loud in front of a group and easing people in. What I did next, do you remember what was next? What I did after all those, I put up my learner outcomes. Do you remember that? Do you remember which learner outcome you voted for? I'm curious. Think about that. Because I had you thinking about my content before I ever started talking about my content. I actually primed your brain. I set it up so that you would be thinking about, and some of you are waiting for the number 2 to happen, and I've been giving you tips on how to do this. I've been modeling it for you through a webinar all the way through it. So here's something else you can do. Deconstruct your own presentation. Think about how you normally present the topic you're going to present, and deconstruct it and go, where's the audience going to do something? And if they're going to sit passively and listen to you, you're doing them a disservice. And we want to invite them in. It's okay if they don't participate. Give them the right to do that. So don't be fooled. Just because you can repeat a speaker's phrase or read the notes is no indication that you understand the principles discussed, how to apply them, or how they relate to what you already know and do. So in note-taking, I'm okay with taking hand notes. I'm also okay with typing in notes. The research out there is kind of mixed on this. There's some that shows that you should handwrite it. There's some that shows it's both okay. What's critical is processing the information and putting it into your own words, not just repeating what the speaker says. And that's the point of elaboration. The research shows the more we can get them to elaborate on the concept or the principles that you've given them, or the research that you've given them in ophthalmology, the more we can get them to elaborate on it, the more they retain, the more they understand it, and the more they apply it. And if they're doing it with another person and they're sharing it, those people will begin to self-correct each other. They'll go, are you sure about that? Are you sure that's right? Or I'm not sure I understood this correctly. Here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? And let them help each other. So you have just embraced the illusion of mastery if you just think your lecture is going to do all the work for you. Evidence-based education strategy, learning is deeper and more durable when it is effortful. I want you to get this one. Learning must be effortful. Now, there's a time and a place for you to sit and be passive. It's okay. It is okay if you choose not to engage. And we have to be comfortable with that our audience may choose that. And that's a hard thing to do because we want to help them. Trying to solve the problem before being taught the solution leads to better learning, even when errors are made in attempts. This one's really interesting. I asked you what you thought you knew about learning. I asked you, how do you know someone learned? I had you wrestling with this before I ever went through any of my content. And I'll let you throw it out there because some of you are having a deer in the headlights moment. Some of you are not. Some of you disagree with me. That's fine. You're disagreeing with the science, not with me. And I'm okay with that. And we have to get okay with that with our audiences. But if you throw a situation out there and let them wrestle with it and come up with what they think are solutions, and then you go through the principles and the concepts, and then you talk about it, they will remember the right answers better than if you just tell them, because learning must be effortful. Learning that is easy, I want you to catch this, learning that is easy is like writing in the sand, here today, gone tomorrow. We know when people are really, truly learning. If any of you are wrestling with any of this information that we're sharing or the questions that have come in your responses, if you're wrestling with it and you're honest with yourself, that wrestling is a good sign that learning is occurring. So when you feel uncomfortable with something that's being said, step back from it and say, well, why am I uncomfortable with this? What's going on here? Because the brain is wrestling with, do I buy this or not? Am I into this? Do I agree with this? And if there's this disagreement, you need to step back and say, why do I disagree? What's going on here? So a session that's 60 tips in 60 seconds, or collecting all the PowerPoints, or getting the crib notes and the tip sheets is short-changing your brain. Learning is deeper and more durable when it's effortful. Now, obviously, you don't want to spend 3 full days being effortful at learning, and that's really exhausting. It's taxing on us, so we have to find the balance. It's really critical that we go through this process. So here's 3 critical evidence-based education strategies. Let's give you some tactics. Let's give you some exact tactics here. Hopefully you got the understanding. Relaxed alertness. You want your audience to have relaxed alertness, and what do we mean by that? A social environment that elicits interest, purpose, and meanings. We are meaning-driven people. We want meaningful work. We want meaningful learning. So your job as a presenter is to set up a situation that elicits learning, purpose, and meanings. And you're probably thinking, well, they're already coming, so why do I have to do this? Because learning is truly a social experience. There's no way you know if you've learned something if you don't have somebody giving you feedback. You have no idea. It's a social situation. The more you can engage it with others, the better off you are. You're highly affected by fear and pleasure centers, highly affected by it. Attendee feels confident, interested, and intrinsically motivated. When you have a participant that's confident and is interested, when they have this natural curiosity and they're intrinsically motivated, they are more open to learning than not. And if they're coming into your presentation at the AAO annual meeting, and they've just had a verbal sparring, I want to say, jousting with somebody in the hallway verbally, they're not going to be confident or interested. They've been emotionally hijacked, unless it was something that they engaged in and enjoyed it. So relaxed alertness is something to think about. How do you make sure your audience has relaxed alertness? I was reading research just recently, and I can't remember the presenter's name. I'll have to get it to Melanie and Deborah so I can give it to you, and Dr. Aaron, that says there are actually 7 questions that we should consider asking our audience before we ever move into learning. And one of the questions is, what's your least favorite ice cream? I used it today in a presentation here in D.C. And the audience says, why did you ask us that? And I said, interesting that you say that. When you shared with somebody what your least favorite ice cream was, the brain did something very different than it normally does. Because you're looking for commonalities in folks, but it's also easing the brain into this conversation and thinking process. Here's the next thing. You want to orchestrate immersion in a complex experience. I'll let that set for a second. You want to be the orchestra conductors that are immersing your audience, your learners, your participants, in a complex experience. What that means, the content, the standards, the subject matter must be integrated within the events and experiences that engage emotion, thinking, and imagination. You can do this by having them imagine. You can orchestrate the brain going somewhere and imagining something. And this is critical to think about. How do you set up for them a situation where they're going to apply the content that you're going to give them, the principles, and get the brain going there? It's immersed in this. More importantly, must have personal meaning for attendee learning. If it's not relevant and of value and contextual, they're going to walk away from it. The term orchestrated means the presenter provides experiences that participants interact with in concrete and also in physical ways. This one's going to sound a little bit childish to you. One of the most effective strategies that works for adults or kids, that works across the board, is 4 corners. You have everybody stand up. If you have a room that's not huge, if you don't have thousands of people, even 100 people, 200 people, and you give each corner an answer. You say A means this, B means this corner over here means this is A, B, C, D, going around the room clockwise, and you tell them what they are, and you say, here's the question, go stand in a corner where you believe the answer is. And you watch what happens. You're going to see peer pressure, as people are going to follow the group, and you're going to see this disconnect. But that whole process of them getting up, which they're going to groan and they're going to moan, oh my gosh, I just sit down, I have to get up. Yes. Just let them do it. And they're going to say, well, this feels very childish. Yes, it does. But that's okay, because you're doing something physical, and you're also making them think it through and very concretely. So orchestrated immersion, attendee identify attributes, generate descriptions, diagram how. And I'm sorry that draft there got draft a model. There's some other ways to do it. Have them diagram the concept that they learned from you and how it applies in their practice, or how it applies in their residence. Ultimately, the attendee must own the learning by you asking the attendee to do something with the content before leaving the session. You've only got 15 minutes. Give the concept out there or the results of the research, and then ask them, what are you going to do with this? If this is the results, what are you going to do with this? What are you going to do with this when you get back to your practice? Let them own that. Orchestrated immersion in complex experience. Relaxed alertness, orchestrated immersion. Number 3, active processing. Active processing. Participant must be immersed in rich, complex, dynamic experiences, not passive listening. Passive listening to a didactic lecture. And here's the other thing. If it's going to be a panel of 4 people, and they're each going to get 10 or 15 minutes to present, all you've done is multiplied the talking heads by 4. It's not really helping the audience. And if the audience is going to sit quietly and listen, just remember that is the illusion of knowing. Yeah, I'm not real sure what you mean by chewing food, but help us out there. Presenter must guide attendees to analyze, demonstrate, display, discuss, summarize, reflect on, and present their thoughts on the feedback. The more you can feel comfortable with giving the audience time to do this, the more likely they're going to retain it, remember it, and apply it. Oh, can one learn while eating? Mina, are you eating back there? Is that what you're doing? I'm curious. Can one learn while eating? I don't have that solid answer for that question. The question, it comes down to, are they thinking while they're eating? Are they thinking about their food? I think there might be ways they can. That one's an interesting one. I'm thinking about that one. I don't have an answer for you real quick. So active processing. So relaxed alertness, orchestrated immersion, active processing. Look at this. This needs to happen in your presentations. Look at this. Relaxed alertness, environment, and emotional client. This is critical for them to learn. They have to feel it's a safe space. They have to feel that it's okay to have the wrong answer. Orchestrated immersion, the presentation, the facilitation, the active processing, their job of mental engagement and consolidation into a schema. We call it the mental framework. Cognitive learning. Which of these 3, relaxed alertness, orchestrated immersion, active processing, do you need to work on for the presentation that you're going to do for AAO? Which of these 3 do you need to work on? Type in a response for me. Which of these 3? Okay, Sheriff, thank you. Number 3, active processing, okay. Thank you, folks. All of them. Okay, Mina. Orchestrated immersion, active processing, all of them. We have some type A's here, 1 and 3. All of them again. All of them in a 7-minute talk. Oh, Eileen, wow. Wow, that's, if you can get good, Eileen, at framing what you're going to talk about and providing the frame for the audience, you can fast track them. If you can provide a metaphor for them to think about what you're talking about, they will all get on the same page and move very fast to the other 3 things. So just think about that. Engaging participants from the first moment. First PowerPoint slide. Thanks, Vincent. Appreciate that. So what's elaboration? I've just got a few minutes here. What do you think elaboration is? I'd like for you to type in some responses for me. What do you think elaboration is? Would you tell us, please? What do you think the word elaboration means? Kind of curious, what is elaboration? Unpack a learning point. Frank, I like that. Unpack it. Unpack what it means to me. Unpack how it connects to me. Unpack what it means to my practice. Unpack what it means to my patients. I like that. Adding the details. Expanding on the concept. Connected to what you already know, like these. Expand on an idea. Expounding upon a topic with examples. There's an interesting one. Ability to transfer what they heard into their own words and ideas that are relevant to them. Explain a concept. These are so on target, folks. And what's going to be interesting is don't overkill yourself with this. Don't overthink it. If you've got 30 minutes, where are the 2 places you can stop in 30 minutes and give them 2 minutes each to do this? The research shows if they just get 2 minutes during your presentation to do this, it has more impact than you just talking to them. So elaboration is explaining a concept cognitively and crisply and effectively, where effectively is efficient and understandable. And here's the other thing. Most of our conference education is based on efficiency of delivery of information, not the effectiveness of them actually taking the concepts and learning it. So if presenters just engage the attendees in listening or repetition, the audience quickly hits a limit of what they can keep in their mind. This is called cognitive load. And they reach cognitive overload fast, really fast. If you engage each participant in elaboration, there's no known limit to how much material they can learn. Isn't that interesting? This comes from Make It Stick, the book. Elaboration is the process of giving new material meaning by expressing in your own words, connecting with what you already know. So that's a really good question, Vivian. How do you elaborate on hard facts of a scientific research? So my thoughts on this are that people really care about what the research means to them. And if you can stick there, you can give them the hard facts, but just take 1 or 2 points. And how does it apply to what they need to do? How many breaks do you typically recommend to give them? Two breaks in 30 minutes talk, so about every 15 minutes. Here's what the research says. The research from Dr. John Medina, Dr. Daniel Willingham, Dr. Ruth Colvin Clark. It's been repeated over and over again. It's 10 minutes. If you have a 30-minute presentation, break it up. I would suggest break it up into 3 segments. Do 8 minutes of content, 2 minutes of them processing. 8 minutes of content, 2 minutes of them processing. 8 minutes of content, 2 minutes of processing. And the easiest thing to do is to have them take 2 ideas. What are you going to do? I'm going to stop here. There's a little bit more in the presentation. I'm not worried about covering my content. I'm looking at the time. I want you to get what you can from this. Don't feel FOMO, fear of missing out, because I've got more content here. Don't feel that. You've got what you need so far. Take what you can. I want to know from you, type it in the next minute, what are you going to take away from this presentation? What are you going to do differently? Would you type in one idea that you're willing to work on for your presentation for AAO? Do it quickly. We've got less than a minute. What do you think? One idea. One idea. More engagement. This is what you're doing now, by the way. Focus on the takeaway. Focus more on the learner. Beautiful. Engagement, audience participation, give audience more time to process. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Seek attendee engagement early and often. Talk less. Ask a question before you talk. Create more interactive. Redo your entire presentation based on engagement and relevance. Sheriff, I don't think you have to redo it all. Find some places where you can drop in this so that you don't have to redo all that work. Set up a situation where they imagine how they can apply the concept. Eileen, yes, 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 yes. Give the idea more time to process. Absolutely. Give the audience time to think and process. Get attendees to engage with their fellow learners, not just the instructor. Yes. Audience participation examples so learners can self-actualize. Thank you. Challenge participants to consider their own parallels. I like that one. Involving an audience, some type of imagining themselves in the situation. So we got 6 minutes, folks. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Maria Aaron. You got just a few seconds to say final comments.
Jeff, that was fabulous. I loved all the comments from the attendees. Sorry I wasn't able to see anything, but I think that everybody that was engaged, that was on the webinar, seemed engaged and certainly has some good take-home points. One of the other things I was going to throw out is that one way to engage in a scientific session is to have a short case presentation. And I think that's a good way to ask people to talk to the person next to them, talk about, a solution to the case that's presented. And, even if you're presenting data on research, if you force them to think about how they're going to apply it to a patient, I think that's going to stick more. But engaging the audience, asking them questions. I liked the thumbs up, thumbs down. That's a great way to get them involved. And, breaking up every 10 minutes or so is just perfect advice. I think we've got lots of good practical tips from you, and we're going to put these all online so that feel free to share them with everyone and anyone that's interested. But Jeff, it was an engaging, educational, and entertaining presentation, and we're very grateful to have you.
Thank you so much. There will be another webinar, and there will actually be 2 more face-to-face presentations at the conference about this. So thanks, folks. Any final words, Dr. Aaron?
No, I don't think so. We'll make sure that we advertise the next webinar within the next week.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for participating, and this concludes the end of your webinar for this evening. Have a great rest of your day, morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world.